The moment Callahan Thorne saw the bracelet, time stopped. He had been nervous all evening. 4 years since Elise. 4 years of silence. His hands had trembled as he buttoned his navy shirt that morning, and his 7-year-old daughter Wren had watched him from the bathroom doorway, with knowing eyes far too wise for her age. "Daddy, you look handsome," she had said. "Are you going to marry her?" He had laughed, scooped her up, pressed his lips to her wild curly hair. "It is just one date, little bird. Do not get ahead of yourself." But now sitting at the corner table of the Harbor View Grill in Boston, watching the door, Callahan wondered what he was doing here at all. The amber light from the windows spilled across white tablecloths. Soft jazz played somewhere in the background. Everything was elegant, romantic, designed for moments like this. He was not designed for moments like this. Not anymore. 4 years ago, his world had ended on a rain-slicked road 3 days before Christmas. One moment, Elise was alive, laughing, planning Wren's birthday party, talking about the vacation they would take in the spring. The next moment, she was gone, hit and run. The driver never found. The case closed after 6 months with nothing but a file full of dead ends and a widower's broken heart. Callahan had buried his wife on Christmas Eve. He had placed her favorite bracelet, a silver band with Celtic knotwork that he had bought her on their honeymoon in Ireland, into the casket with his own hands. He had watched them lower her into the frozen ground. And then he had locked away every part of himself that knew how to love. Until tonight. The door opened. She walked in at exactly 7:02. Blonde hair catching the light. A simple blue dress that somehow managed to look both elegant and approachable. Her eyes scanned the restaurant with practiced caution, the look of someone who had learned to assess situations before fully entering them. Callahan stood, his heart hammering. She was beautiful, truly beautiful. But it was not her beauty that made his blood run cold. It was the bracelet on her wrist. Silver, Celtic knotwork. Delicate and distinctive, the kind of piece you would never see twice in a lifetime. He would recognize it anywhere, in any light, in any lifetime. He had chosen that bracelet himself 15 years ago in a tiny jewelry shop on the coast of Ireland during their honeymoon. He had clasped it around Elise's wrist on their wedding night. He had watched her wear it every single day of their marriage. He had placed it in her casket with his own hands. So why was this stranger wearing it? The woman approached his table. Up close, he could see the way her eyes tracked movement differently than most people. The slight delay in her response when the hostess spoke. The careful grace of someone navigating a world she could not fully hear. She was deaf. The realization clicked into place alongside another uglier one. His colleagues had set him up. Declan Merrick had insisted on arranging this blind date, had been strangely eager about the whole thing. They had told Callahan her name was Rowan, that she was 30, blonde, a writer. They had deliberately withheld one crucial detail. From a corner booth across the restaurant, Callahan caught movement. Declan hunched over his phone camera aimed directly at their table. 2 other colleagues flanked him, recording, waiting. This was a trap. They expected him to panic, to make excuses, to flee. But Callahan barely registered the betrayal. He could not tear his eyes from the bracelet. Rowan Bellamy stopped at his table and offered a tentative smile. Her voice when she spoke had a particular quality, clear, but slightly modulated. The voice of someone who could not hear her own volume. "Callahan, I am Rowan. It is nice to meet you." He should respond. He should shake her hand. He should do something other than stare at her wrist like a man who had seen a ghost. Because in a way he had. "I am sorry." He finally managed, and then his hands began to move. Sign language. Fluid and natural, as if he had been born speaking it, because in many ways he had. "I apologize for staring. Please sit down. I promise I can explain." The transformation in Rowan's face was instantaneous. Her eyes, so guarded and prepared for disappointment, went wide with pure shock. Her lips parted. Her hands flew to her chest. In 17 blind dates, not a single man had ever spoken her language. Not one. They had spoken slowly, loudly, as if volume could bridge the gap. They had typed on phones and pointed at menus. They had made excuses and fled. But this man, this stranger, was signing to her as naturally as breathing. From the corner booth, Declan nearly dropped his phone. His hands were shaking, not from excitement, but from something that looked almost like relief. For 3 years, Marcus Vance had owned him. One stupid mistake borrowing company funds to pay his mother's nursing home bills, and Marcus had transformed him into a puppet. Do this. Record that. Sabotage this person's career. Declan was tired, so tired of being a weapon in someone else's hands. What the hell is he doing? Graham hissed beside him. Is that sign language? Tobias whispered, leaning forward. Declan's carefully constructed plan was collapsing in real time. Callahan was supposed to panic. He was supposed to make excuses. He was supposed to prove he was the fraud they believed him to be. Instead, he was pulling out a chair for a deaf woman and greeting her in her own language. Part of Declan, the part that remembered who he used to be before the blackmail, before the fear, hoped this problem would be big enough to bring everything crashing down. At the table by the window, Rowan was still staring at Callahan's hands with wonder. You know sign language. She signed back, her movements sharp with disbelief. You are fluent. My mother was deaf. Callahan signed, settling into his chair with an ease that spoke of a lifetime of practice. ASO is my first language. I have been speaking it for 35 years. Something cracked open in Rowan's expression. Something that had been locked away for a very long time. Tears glistened in her eyes, though she blinked them back quickly. No one has ever... She signed, then stopped. Started again. In 17 dates, no one has ever spoken to me in my own language. Then they were fools, Callahan signed, and they missed out on getting to know someone extraordinary. The compliment made her blush, but Callahan's eyes kept drifting to the bracelet. He could not help it. The questions burned in his throat. Finally, he could hold back no longer. The bracelet on your wrist? He signed carefully, forcing his hands to remain steady. Please, I need to know where it came from. It is important. Rowan's fingers moved to touch the silver band. A shadow crossed her face. A gift, she signed slowly. From someone I never met. An anonymous benefactor who paid for my college education after my parents died. They sent this bracelet along with the first tuition check. No name, no return address. I have worn it every day for 12 years. 12 years. Callahan's mind raced. Elise had been alive 12 years ago. The bracelet had been on her wrist. So how could this stranger have received one that appeared identical, unless someone had taken the original from Elise's grave and given it to Rowan? The thought made him sick. Your parents, he signed. How did they die? Rowan's hands stilled. The question was too personal for a first date, too intimate for strangers. But something in Callahan's expression must have told her this was not idle curiosity. Car accident. She signed, finally, her movements slow and heavy with old grief. 12 years ago, Christmas Eve, we were driving home from my grandmother's house. A car came out of nowhere, hit us and kept going. Her hands paused, trembled. The police said the driver was probably drunk. They found broken glass at the scene, expensive glass from a luxury car. They tracked it to a few possible vehicles, but the investigation went nowhere. Insufficient evidence, they said. Case closed after 8 months. Callahan felt ice spreading through his veins. Christmas Eve. Hit and run. Luxury vehicle. Investigation closed. My wife, he signed, forcing his hands to remain steady. She died 4 years ago. The week before Christmas, hit and run. The police found evidence of a luxury vehicle. The case was closed after 6 months. Insufficient evidence. Rowan's face drained of color. That is exactly the same pattern, she signed. I know. They stared at each other across the table. The coincidence was too precise, too perfect, Two families destroyed in the same way, 12 years apart, both investigations abandoned for the same reason. What if it was not a coincidence? Callahan signed slowly. What if it was the same person? In the corner booth, Declan pulled out his phone and dialed the number he dreaded most. Marcus, he whispered when the line connected. We have a problem. 12 blocks away, in a corner office on the 47th floor of a gleaming downtown tower, Marcus Vance listened to Declan's panicked report with a face carved from stone. COO of Whitmore and Associates, 42 years old, silver-tongued and silver-tempered. He had built his career on charm and careful manipulation, on knowing exactly which strings to pull and when. He had also built his career on secrets, on silence, on the bodies buried so deep no one would ever find them. He knows sign language, Declan was saying. The whole plan fell apart. They are actually connecting Marcus, and there is something else, something about a bracelet. She is wearing a bracelet that upset him. Marcus Vance went very still. The bracelet. He had taken it from Elise Thorne's grave 3 weeks after her funeral in the dead of night. A trophy, a reminder. He had kept it for months, unsure what to do with it, until the guilt became too much, and he sent it anonymously to another of his victims. Rowan Bellamy, the deaf girl whose parents he had killed 12 years before. He had meant it as penance, as some twisted form of apology. He had never imagined the two threads of his violence would cross. But now Callahan Thorne was sitting across a dinner table from Rowan Bellamy, and they were comparing notes on their dead loved ones, and Marcus could feel the walls closing in. Handle it, he said into the phone. I do not care how. Just handle it. He ended the call and sat alone in his office, staring at the city lights spread out below him. He had killed before. He could kill again if necessary, whatever it took to keep his secrets buried. 3 hours later, long after the restaurant had emptied and the staff had begun stacking chairs, Callahan and Rowan still sat at their corner table. They had talked about everything. About his work as an IT support specialist, a far cry from the software engineering career he had abandoned after Elise's death, because the long hours had kept him from Ren, and he refused to let his daughter grow up alone. About her life as a freelance writer, building a career from her small apartment with only her cat Hemingway for company. About the 17 failed blind dates she had endured, watching man after man make excuses and flee the moment they realized she was deaf. You are the first one who ever just talked to me. She signed somewhere around the second hour. Not at me, not around me, to me. Like I am a person you actually want to know. Callahan felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been frozen for years. You are a person I want to know, he signed back. You are funny, you are brilliant, you are beautiful, and you have a cat named after a famous writer, which makes you the most interesting person I have ever met. She laughed at that, a real laugh, unguarded and warm. The sound drew smiles from the few remaining staff members. I want to look into this, Callahan signed as they finally gathered their things to leave. The connection between your parents' accident and my wife's death. It might be nothing, but it feels like something. Rowan nodded slowly. I have spent 12 years trying not to think about that night, trying to move forward. But if there is even a chance of finding answers, let me try, Callahan signed. Please. She reached out and touched his arm. Just briefly, just enough to let him know she trusted him. It was the first time anyone had touched him with tenderness since Elise. The following Saturday, Rowan came to meet Ren. Callahan had spent the entire week preparing. He had cleaned the house 3 times. He had coached Ren on basic signs, watching her small hands fumble through the movements with determined concentration. He had bribed the cat with extra treats and hoped for the best. When the doorbell rang, Ren bolted for the door before he could stop her. Rowan stood on the porch holding a gift bag, wearing jeans and a soft yellow sweater that made her look like sunshine. When she saw Wren, her face transformed with genuine delight. Wren took a deep breath. Her small hands rose, trembling slightly. "Hello." She signed the movements clumsy but clear. "Nice to meet you." Rowan's eyes filled with tears. She knelt down to Wren's level, her own hands moving slowly, gently. Callahan translated the words his daughter could not yet understand. "Hello, Wren. Your daddy told me you are an expert on volcanoes. I brought you something." From the gift bag, Rowan produced a stuffed volcano complete with orange felt lava erupting from the top. Wren's shriek of joy could probably be heard 3 blocks away. What followed was 2 hours of pure, unfiltered happiness. Wren dragged Rowan through the house, showing her every volcano book, every rock collection, every crayon drawing of magma and eruptions. Rowan examined each treasure with genuine interest, asking questions through signs that Callahan translated. They ended up in the kitchen eating cookies and drinking milk while Wren practiced more signs. "Cat," she signed, pointing at their orange tabby. "Cookie," she signed, holding up her snack. "Daddy," she signed, pointing at Callahan with a grin. When she accidentally signed bathroom instead of butterfly, all three of them dissolved into laughter. Later, while Wren ran off to use the actual bathroom, Rowan turned to Callahan with tears in her eyes. "She is incredible," she signed. "You have done such a beautiful job with her." "Some days I feel like I am barely keeping it together," Callahan admitted. "Like I am one forgotten permission slip away from complete disaster." "You are not." Rowan's hands moved with conviction. "She is confident. She is curious. She is kind. That does not happen by accident. That comes from you." Before Callahan could respond, Wren came running back into the kitchen. She stopped at his side, tugging his sleeve, her eyes fixed on Rowan's wrist. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice small and wondering. "She is wearing Mommy's bracelet. Did Mommy send her to us?" Callahan's heart stopped. He looked at his daughter, at her wide, innocent eyes, at the absolute conviction in her face. "Maybe she did, little bird," he whispered back. "Maybe she did." That night, after Rowan had gone home and Wren was asleep, clutching her new stuffed volcano, Callahan sat alone at his kitchen table with his laptop open. He had been investigating Elise's death since the day they closed the case. The police had called it unsolvable. No witnesses, no camera footage, no leads. But Callahan had never stopped looking. Tonight, with new determination burning in his chest, he enhanced old security footage, frame by frame, adjusted the contrast, sharpened the edges, and there it was. A car, silver, luxury sedan, speeding away from the direction of the accident exactly 3 minutes after the estimated time of impact. He could not make out the full license plate, only the last three characters, 7K9. Callahan pulled up the DMV database, a database he definitely should not have access to, but years of obsession had made him resourceful. He cross-referenced silver luxury vehicles registered in the Boston area with plates ending in those characters. One result, his blood turned to ice. The car was registered to Marcus Vance, his mentor, his advocate at the company. The man who had championed his career, recommended him for promotions, treated him like a protege. The man who had killed his wife. Callahan's hands shook as he dug deeper. Old police reports, archived newspaper articles. And there, buried in a decade-old file, he found it. 12 years ago, Marcus Vance had been questioned in connection with a hit-and-run accident on Christmas Eve. 2 victims, a married couple. The investigation had been closed due to insufficient evidence. The victims' names were Thomas and Maria Bellamy. Rowan's parents, the same man, the same method, the same pattern of escape and cover-up. Marcus Vance had killed Elise, and 12 years before that he had killed Rowan's parents. Callahan sat in the dark kitchen, staring at his screen, feeling the world rearrange itself around him. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop digging, or next time it will be your daughter." Callahan's hands went cold. He read the message again and again. Each time the words cut deeper. Your daughter, Wren, his little bird, his reason for breathing. He stood up so fast the chair crashed backward. Ran down the hallway, threw open her bedroom door. She was there, safe. Sleeping peacefully, her stuffed volcano clutched to her chest, her curly hair spread across the pillow. Callahan sank to his knees beside her bed. His whole body was shaking. For the first time in years, he considered giving up. Marcus Vance had money, power, connections. He had killed at least 4 people and walked free. What chance did a single father with a laptop and a borrowed database password have against that? Maybe the smart thing, the safe thing was to delete the evidence. Forget everything. Protect Wren above all else. But as he knelt there in the darkness, watching his daughter sleep, he heard Elise's voice. Clear as the day she had spoken the words. He was back in the hospital room, the machines beeping slower and slower. Elise's hand cold in his, her eyes fighting to stay open. "Cal," her voice was barely a whisper. "Promise me something." Anything. He could barely speak through the tears. "Do not disappear after I am gone. Do not lock yourself away." She squeezed his hand with what little strength remained. "Wren needs to see you live. Really live. She needs to see that love is not something to fear just because it can hurt." "Elise, promise me, Cal. Promise me you will keep fighting. For Wren. For yourself. For the life we were supposed to have together." He had promised. Through tears and breaking heart, he had promised. And for 4 years, he had broken that promise every single day. Hiding from life. Hiding from love. Hiding from everything that might remind him of what he had lost. But not anymore. Marcus Vance had taken Elise from him, had taken Rowan's parents, had stolen years and futures and happiness from people who had done nothing wrong. It was time to keep his promise. He told Rowan everything, showed her the evidence, watched her face cycle through shock, grief, rage, and finally a cold, hard determination that matched his own. "He killed my parents." She signed her movements sharp as knives. "And then he paid for my education. Sent me this bracelet. Like blood money could make up for what he took." Callahan took a breath. "There is something else you need to know about the bracelet." Rowan's hand stilled. "It did not come from a jewelry store. It belonged to my wife. Elise wore it every day of our marriage." His hands trembled as he signed. "I put it in her casket myself. I watched them bury her with it on her wrist." The color drained from Rowan's face. "Marcus dug it up. He desecrated her grave to take it, and then he sent it to you." Rowan looked down at the bracelet she had worn for 12 years, the bracelet she had treasured as a gift from a mysterious benefactor. Her hands flew to the clasp. She tore it off her wrist and threw it across the room as if it had burned her. "I have been wearing a dead woman's jewelry." She signed, her whole body shaking. "Stolen from her grave. By the man who murdered my parents." She sank onto the couch, her face in her hands. Callahan sat beside her. Did not touch her, knew she needed space to process this horror. But he stayed close, present, ready. After a long moment, Rowan lifted her head. The tears were gone. In their place was something harder, colder, more determined than he had ever seen. "I want him destroyed," she signed. "I want the world to know exactly what kind of monster he is." "So do I," Callahan signed back. "And I know how to do it." The proof came from an unexpected source. 3 days later, Declan Merrick appeared on Callahan's doorstep. His face was gaunt. His hands were shaking. He looked like a man who had not slept in weeks. "I know what he did," Declan said before Callahan could speak. Marcus, I know about the accidents. Both of them. Callahan's fists clenched. You set up that blind date. You were part of his plan. Because he forced me. Declan's voice cracked. I made a mistake 5 years ago. Took money from the company when I was desperate. My mother's nursing home bills were drowning me. Marcus found out. He has held it over my head ever since. If I do not do what he says, he destroys me. He pulled a USB drive from his pocket, held it out with trembling fingers. But I cannot do this anymore. I cannot be part of covering up murder. Callahan took the drive. What is on this? Everything. Marcus keeps backups of everything as insurance, emails, financial records, and dash cam footage from the night your wife died. He kept it as proof of what he did in case he ever needed leverage over someone. Callahan stared at the small device in his hand. Years of grief, years of questions. The answers had been there all along, locked away in a monster's insurance file. Why now? He asked quietly. Why come to me now? Declan met his eyes. Because I saw you with her. Rowan. I saw the way you talked to her. The way you treated her like a person instead of a problem. And I realized I have been working for a man who would destroy that kind of connection without a second thought. He took a shaky breath. I have been a coward for too long. Let me help you end this. The annual shareholders meeting of Whitmore and Associates drew the city's most powerful figures. Board members, investors, media representatives with cameras and microphones. Everyone who mattered gathered in the grand ballroom of the downtown convention center, dressed in their finest, ready to celebrate another year of record profits. Marcus Vance stood at the podium, preparing to deliver his keynote address. He looked every inch the successful executive, tailored suit, confident smile, the bearing of a man who had never faced a consequence in his life. Callahan sat in the back row, Rowan beside him, her hand gripping his. Declan was 3 rows ahead, pale but resolute. The FBI agents were stationed at every exit. They had reviewed the evidence. They had their warrants. They were waiting for the signal. Marcus began his speech, words about integrity, about ethics, about building a company culture based on trust and transparency. The irony was unbearable. Callahan's phone vibrated. A text from Declan. Now. On the massive screen behind Marcus, the promotional video suddenly flickered, changed, replaced by grainy dash cam footage that every person in the room would remember for the rest of their lives. A dark road. Headlights cutting through the rain. A woman's figure caught in the beam. The sickening sound of impact. And then, clear as day, Marcus Vance's face reflected in the rearview mirror as he accelerated away from the scene. The ballroom went silent. Marcus turned, saw the footage, his face drained of color. What? He stammered. This is someone turn that off. But no one moved. Every eye in the room was fixed on the screen. The video played on. The timestamp in the corner matched the night of Elise's death. The license plate was clearly visible. Then the footage cut to old news archives. Headlines about the Bellamy accident 12 years earlier. Marcus's face in old photographs leaving a police station after questioning. The whispers started, a tide of shock and disgust rippling through the crowd. Marcus Vance! An FBI agent stepped forward from the side of the room, her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. You are under arrest for vehicular manslaughter, obstruction of justice evidence, tampering, and grave desecration. You have the right to remain silent. Marcus's mask shattered completely. He stumbled backward as 2 agents moved toward him, with handcuffs ready. No, this is a mistake. I did not. You cannot. Callahan stood. Rowan rose beside him. You killed my wife, Callahan said, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. You left her dying in the street and drove away. And then you stole her bracelet from her grave. Rowan stepped forward. Her hands moved and Callahan translated for everyone to hear. 12 years ago, you killed my mother and father. You took everything from me. And then you sent me money and jewelry like that could wash away what you did. She held up her wrist bare, now the bracelet clutched in her other hand. This belonged to his wife. You stole it from her body and gave it to me as some kind of sick penance. You thought you could buy forgiveness. You thought money could wash away blood. Her hands kept moving. Her eyes never left Marcus's face. But today the truth speaks. Today justice comes for you. And no amount of power or money will save you from what you deserve. The handcuffs clicked into place around Marcus's wrists. As agents led him toward the exit, he passed within feet of Callahan and Rowan. Their eyes met, and Marcus Vance saw something in their faces that broke him more than any prison sentence ever could. Peace. They had found peace. They had found each other, and they had found justice, all the things he had tried to destroy. 3 months after the trial, Marcus Vance was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. The courtroom had been packed for every day of proceedings. Media coverage had been relentless. The story of the charming executive who had killed 4 people across 12 years and the 2 survivors who had brought him to justice captured the nation. Declan Merrick received a suspended sentence in exchange for his testimony. The judge noted his cooperation and the coercion he had faced. Last Callahan heard Declan had entered therapy and was working to rebuild his life. They were not friends perhaps, could never be, but when they passed each other outside the courthouse on the final day, Declan had stopped. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for not giving up, for being the man I should have been brave enough to be." Callahan had nodded. It was not forgiveness, not exactly, but it was acknowledgement, and sometimes that was enough. Standing outside the federal building on sentencing day, Wren between them, Callahan and Rowan, watched Marcus being led away in chains. "It is over," Callahan said softly. Rowan squeezed his hand. Wren looked up at both of them, her small face serious. "Daddy is the bad man going away forever. For a very long time, little bird. He cannot hurt anyone else." Wren nodded solemnly. Then her face brightened. "Can we get ice cream now?" Despite everything, Callahan laughed. Rowan laughed too. "Yes," Callahan said. "I think we have earned some ice cream." 1 year later, they returned to the Harborview Grill. Same restaurant, same table by the window, same amber light spilling across white tablecloths, but everything else had changed. Wren sat between them, now 8 years old and fluent enough in sign language to hold her own conversations with Rowan. She wore a dress for the occasion, something she rarely agreed to, and kept shooting Callahan meaningful looks that were about as subtle as fireworks. "Your daughter looks like she is about to burst," Rowan signed, amused. "What is going on?" Callahan smiled. "You will see." He nodded at Wren. The little girl took a deep breath, her face shifting into an expression of profound seriousness. Her hands rose. She signed slowly, carefully, each word perfect. "Rowan, will you be my mom? Like officially, forever." Rowan's hands flew to her mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she turned to Callahan, who had slipped from his chair and was kneeling beside the table, a small velvet box in his trembling hands. "Rowan Bellamy," he said aloud, his voice rough with emotion, "you walked into my life on what I thought was the worst day, and you turned it into something beautiful. You helped me find justice for Elise. You taught my daughter that love has no barriers. You showed me that broken pieces can become something whole again." He opened the box. A simple ring. Elegant. Perfect. "I am not asking you to replace anyone. I am asking you to be yourself, to be part of our family, to let us be part of yours." He took a shaky breath. "Will you marry me?" Rowan was crying so hard she could barely sign, but her answer was clear. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." The restaurant erupted in applause. Strangers cheered. The waitstaff wiped tears from their eyes, and Wren launched herself at both of them, creating a tangle of arms and laughter and overwhelming joy. Callahan slipped the ring onto Rowan's finger. It fit perfectly, just like she did. 1 year after the wedding, they returned once more. Same restaurant, same table, but their family had grown. Rowan held a baby in her arms, a little boy with Callahan's eyes and a curious expression that seemed to take in everything around him. They had named him Thomas after Rowan's father. Wren sat across from them, 9 years old now, teaching her baby brother his first sign. Family, she signed, guiding his tiny hands. This is the sign for family. The baby gurgled happily, waving his fists. Callahan watched them, his wife, his daughter, his son, and felt a fullness in his chest that he had never expected to feel again. Daddy, Wren's voice was soft, thoughtful. You know how volcanoes destroy everything, but then the lava cools and becomes new land, and flowers grow there. Callahan nodded, unsure where she was going. I think that is what happened to us. She looked at Rowan, at baby Thomas, at him. Something terrible burned everything down, but we did not just leave the ashes there. We planted something new, and now we have flowers. She smiled, that wise, beyond her years smile. Mommy Elise is the volcano. She had to go away, and it hurts so much. But Rowan is the flower that grew after, and baby Thomas, and our whole family. She reached out and touched the Celtic bracelet on Rowan's wrist, returned, now cleaned. Its meaning transformed from horror to hope. This bracelet was in the fire, but now it is part of the garden. Callahan could not speak. Tears streamed down his face. 9 years old. His daughter was 9 years old, and she understood grief and healing better than most adults ever would. That is beautiful, little bird, he managed finally. That is exactly right. Rowan was crying, too silent, tears running down her cheeks. She reached across the table and took Callahan's hand. She is right, you know. Rowan signed one-handed. We did plant something new, and it is beautiful. Outside the window, the sun was setting over Boston Harbor, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. The same view they had seen on that first night when everything had been uncertainty and questions in the shadow of a silver bracelet. Now the bracelet rested on Rowan's wrist once more, but its meaning had transformed. It was no longer a symbol of tragedy, of theft, of violence. It was a bridge, a connection between past and present, a reminder that even the darkest stories can find their way toward light. I love you, Callahan signed to Rowan. I love our family. I love everything we have built together. I love you too, she signed back. Thank you for seeing me, for speaking my language, for giving me a home. Baby Thomas chose that moment to grab a handful of Wren's hair and pull. She yelped. The baby giggled. And suddenly the tender moment dissolved into the beautiful chaos of family life negotiations over dessert napkins used as emergency hair detanglers and laughter that echoed off the walls. As the evening wound down and they gathered their things to leave, Wren slipped her hand into Callahan's. Daddy, yes, little bird, I am glad Mommy Elise sent Rowan to us. Callahan looked at his daughter, at her earnest face, at the absolute certainty in her eyes. He thought about fate, about coincidence, about a silver bracelet that should have stayed buried, but instead traveled from one broken heart to another until it led them all here. Maybe Wren was right. Maybe Elise had sent Rowan to them somehow, from wherever she was now. Me too, little bird, he said softly. Me too. They walked out into the evening together, Callahan carrying Thomas, Rowan holding Wren's hand, all four of them moving as one toward the car, toward home, toward the rest of their lives. The silence between Callahan and Rowan had never been empty. It had been a language all its own, hands speaking what voices could not, hearts understanding what words could never capture. Some people search their whole lives for home. Callahan and Rowan had found it in each other, and they were never letting go.